Hello and welcome to your first asynchronous lesson. Proud of you for making it this far. With the program I'm using, it can only make 15-minute videos at the max. That's why there's 2 videos for today. So we'll see how far we can get. So this is a big day because we are officially starting with our math notebooks. So the one supply I'm hoping you have is some sort of notebook. So I'm just using a regular Mead 5-star. It does not need to be multiple subjects. One is fine. I'm going to put a cover here calling it like the geometry notebook of the year. But let's get it set up. So I like to leave this is just a folder page, but I like to leave the first page blank for now and then write geometry like a title page on it. So a reminder, this notebook we'll use all year and we will not put homework in it. We will just put our notes in it. So then this is the first page after the cover page. So you'll notice I have the standards taped in. So this is in that packet that I gave you. And if you weren't able to grab one of those packets, if I didn't have it for you, then it is a link available. And we are going to put this at the start of every chapter. So across the top, I like to write chapter whatever one we are on. So this is chapter 1. And then when we are done with chapter 1, we're actually going to paperclip all of the chapter 1 notes together. So they'll be like sectioned off. Okay, so you can be pausing the video to do that. What I want to do is talk about the standards. So you can see that on this page there are 6 standards listed. However, only 4 of them I'm going to be assessed on. So we are going to start with standard 1. It is section 1.1 in the textbook. I know it's a little blurry right now. When we do notes, it'll be clearer. But so these are the learning targets we're hoping to accomplish by the end of standard 1. We will not finish standard 1 today. Okay, but when we are done with standard 1, we should be able to name and work with points, lines, planes, segments, and rays. And we should be able to draw diagrams of points, lines, planes, segments, and rays. Okay, that's the goal of standard 1. So once we've achieved that, then we'll move on to standard 2. Okay, so this is kind of my checkoff page. I even use this as a checklist, and once I can do those, then you can check them off. All right, so I'm going to zoom back out and go on to the next page. And so yeah, I just taped in those standards. All right, so this is also a sheet that was in that packet. Every now and then we'll do guided notes, and that's what we're doing today. So you can tape these in also. Again, the link's available. But I want to today talk about sort of the structure of how notes will look every day. So every day in our notes, we will first write the date on the first line of the notes. So whatever day you are watching this, I'm going to consider it the 14th, but it could be the 15th. So we'll fill in the date. We'll always write what section of the textbook this lesson is found in. So when we have questions on it, we know where to look in our resources. And then standard 1, the basics of geometry terms. That is what we're working on. Okay, so we're gonna do these notes in 2 halves. The first half is the undefined terms, and the second half is the defined terms. Okay, first and second. I forgot one thing with our notes. The other thing I always do is I put the title. So this is standard 1, and we saw that it's called the basics of geometry terms. And I always just put a bubble around them. I have no idea why, but I do. And this is one of those things like former students. I just this past week got an email from a junior in high school and a junior in college. And they both were sending me pictures of their math notes and showing that they still bubble their titles. Just it became a habit after 8th grade. So that warmed my heart big time. All right, so what we're doing today is laying the groundwork. This is the common terms that we'll use all year. But what is absolutely silly is that the 3 basic terms we're going to use are not even defined. There is no agreed upon mathematical definition for them. Okay, and those are points, lines, and planes. So point is the first one, line, and then plane. Okay, so normally we'd write their definitions, but they don't have any. So instead, we're just going to describe 4 aspects of them. We're going to talk about how many dimensions they have, how they're represented, how to draw them, and how they are labeled. Okay, so here is the absolutely painful to my brain concept of a point, and that is that it has 0 dimensions. It is infinitely small. It takes up absolutely no space at all. It has 0 dimensions. Okay? And people say, oh, I can define point. And I go, awesome, go for it. And they're like, it's a dot. Okay? So I agree that's how it will be represented. It will be represented by a dot, but a dot takes up space and a point does not. Okay? I think of it as like a pinprick, but that even takes up space. Okay? So it is a pinpoint precise location, but it itself has no size. So yes, it is represented by a dot. So like that is a picture of a point. I know my drawing skills are amazing. Okay, and then the way that we will label points is always, always, always with a capital letter. Okay, so I'm going to say that's A, and then in the labeling, here's how we'll write it. We'll write point, abbreviated PT, and A. Okay, and I'm going to point out that that's a capital letter. So this is one of those really picky things. If you don't label your point with a capital letter, if you put like a number or a lowercase letter, it is actually wrong. Okay, so we're going to get in this habit, and it will form quickly, but just want to be clear. All right, so the next undefined term is line. Okay, so we've dealt with lines a lot. So lines do have 1 dimension, okay, but not 2. There is no thickness to a line. It is infinitely thin. Okay, so a line goes on forever, like to the left and to the right, okay, or up and down, but only in that 1 dimension. So I bet a lot of you remember this from elementary school, that the way it's represented is a line with 2 arrows, right? Since they go on forever. So it's represented by a line with 2 arrows. Okay, so I'll draw a picture of one. Ta-da! There's my line. Okay, and there are actually 2 different ways that you can label or name a line. The first one is using points. So if you have 2 points on your line, which we always do, okay, so I'll call this point B and I'll call this point C. I put a dot there and a capital letter, so those are points. Then that line can be named line BC, or it can be named line CB. But the way we write that is we write BC with a little line with 2 arrows above it. Okay, so that works. Or CB, the order does not matter, okay, but that symbol above it does. And then there is actually a third way that you can name this, and that is by using a lowercase, cursive, or italicized letter. So if off on the edge, like by one of the arrows, I put a cursive L, so that's a lowercase cursive L, you can also refer to this as line L. Okay, you can never use a lowercase letter to label a point, okay, but you can use it to name an entire line. So either of those are options. Okay, and then the last undefined term of geometry is a plane. Okay, and a plane is a 2-dimensional thing. I think of it as like a surface, so like the tabletop, okay? Not the thickness of the tabletop, but like the tabletop itself, or like a piece of paper, okay? There is no depth, no thickness to it, but it does go on in 2D, 2 dimensions, okay? So 2 dimensions. The way we draw it, so here's what's confusing. The plane is actually, if we say it's a piece of paper, it's a piece of paper that goes on forever. It has no edge to it, okay? It would go on and on and on and on. We can't draw that, okay? So we do draw it as typically a quadrilateral, even more commonly, actually a parallelogram, okay? But if you just have a shape does have edges, and a plane does not have edges. But just like a dot does take up space and a point does not have any space taken up with it, it's just a way we get our brain to picture the correct thing. Okay, so we're going to say it's represented by a shape, and then I'm going to put in parentheses, typically a parallelogram. Okay, so I'm going to sketch one in this box. So I am going to draw it as a parallelogram. Okay, and just like lines, there were multiple ways to label them. There are multiple ways to identify a plane also. Okay, so the first one is again going back to points. Now you can't use 2 points. We'll talk about why in a little bit, but you have to use 3 points. And those 3 points actually cannot all be in a single line. Okay, they have to be staggered from each other. So if I put this as point D, point E, and point F. Okay, capital letters, dots, those are points. Then I can name this plane, plane DEF. I can also name it plane FED, or any combination of those 3. So the order does not matter. You don't need to go left to right, alphabetical. There's like no requirements on that. Okay, just 3 points that are in the plane that are not on the same line. Okay, but there is another way to name or label a plane, and that is with a bold capital letter that is in a corner. I hesitate to say corner because planes go on forever, so there are actually no corners, but when we represented one, there is a corner to that shape. Okay, so I'm going to put a bold capital letter P in the corner, and there's no dot next to it. It is not a point. That is the name of that plane. So I can also call this plane P. I'm trying to make it be bolder than a regular P. Okay. All right, so those are 3 of the key terms. You've heard of all of them before, but the geometry course is really picky with all of that. Okay, so that's the top half. Now we just need to cover the bottom half, which are more terms you have heard of before. So I bet we've heard of collinear, coplanar, line segment. I know you've heard of that one. Ray, I know you've heard of it. But opposite rays will be new to us. And then intersection. Okay, so we'll click on the second video because this one will run out momentarily to do that. Great job. And also take a brain break. Go stretch. Go do some jumping jacks. Go pet your animal. Go tell someone in your family how much you appreciate them. All right, see you in a second.